government could only raise 760 million cedis out of the projected 3.6 billion Ghana cedis from the 10-year bond, representing 21% of the expected amount. The government, however, decided to extend the closing date for the 10-year bond due to the abysmal patronage. In fact, let me say, it's so gargantuan, is the first of its kind in this country. That could only raise 2.2 billion out of the targeted 3.6 billion, representing 61% patronage. It's unfortunate. And ladies and gentlemen, let me take you through why the bond failed. The bond failed because of a number of reasons. One, the first one is because of an unrealistic assumption. It must be noted that between 2012 and 2016, the consumption of various petroleum products in Ghana increased significantly as a result of the electricity shortages. To be specific, within the period, household and industry demand for petrol and diesel for energy, that is electricity, production increased significantly. In 2016, when the electricity supply situation improved, the consumption for petroleum products declined from 3.36 million metric tons in 2015 to 3.13 million metric tons in 2016. Total consumption for the first year of 2017 stood at 1.74 million metric tons and is expected to reach 2.96 million metric tons at the end of 2017, lower than the 3.13 million metric tons recorded in 2016. The projected consumption is equivalent to the 2012 consumption of 2.96 million metric tons. It is surprising, therefore, that the government had made the assumption that consumption for premium, that is petrol, for 2017 will increase by 3.58% and gasoline, diesel, by 1.9% over the 2016 figures. The projected consumption are grossly overestimated, and any analyst in this world who understands the Ghanaian economy will find this assumption very unrealistic, untruth, and may not have much confidence in the interest in the bond. It is therefore not surprising that the participation rate of the investor was very, very low. The next point, why the bond failed, is because of the fact that the inability of government to meet the debt service coverage ratio. Obviously, you will agree with me that before you go to the international bond market, you will have to communicate to the participant of the bond that the proceeds will be able to service the bonds going forward. Unfortunately, the assumptions that was provided by the Ministry of Finance to the investors were clearly short of the truth. And let me take you to the detail. The Ministry of Finance communicated to the investor through the prospectus that the Energy Debt Recovery Levy of the Energy Sector Levies Act will cover 1.25% of the debt service requirement during the moratorium period and amortizing period. The government has projected an amount of 1.281 billion cedis for the Energy Debt Recovery Levy for 2017. Again, the government had projected to raise 2.4 billion cedis from the 7-year bond and 3.6 billion for the 10-year bond. Assuming that the interest of the 7-year bond is 19%, as we have been told, and 19.5% of the 10-year bond, the interest payment for the first year alone will amount to 456 million for the 7-year bond and 702 million for the 10-year bond. The total amount of interest payment for the first year will be 1.158 billion cedis. Ladies and gentlemen, based on this, the debt service coverage ratio will be equal to, and this is basic mathematics, you have 1.281 billion. That is going to be how much you are going to rake in terms of revenue from the Energy Sector Levies Act. And then you are servicing a debt of 1.158 billion cedis for year one. Ladies and gentlemen, to express this as a ratio, it is 1.1 to 1. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Finance has communicated to the market that that amount will be equivalent to 1.25. So any investor sitting out there will know that your numbers do not add up. Your numbers do not add up. I don't know what type of economic management we have, managers we have in this country. They can't just do basic mathematics. This is board maths. Basic mathematics cannot be done. Clearly, this calculation breaches the debt service coverage requirement as communicated by their own prospectus. Again, it is not surprising that the investors decided not to participate in this risky transaction. Any fund manager with strong risk management back office will not sanction the purchase of such a risky bond. The next point why the investors decided to stay away from this bond is the fact that the bond itself has a very confusing structure. The structure is complex, it has no track record, and it is very much unknown. According to the prospectus, ladies and gentlemen, the status of the bond is a senior unsecured bond backed by an assignment of the Energy Sector Levies Act, ESLA, receivables by the sponsor, being the government of Ghana, to the issuer under the assignment agreement dated 12 October 2017. What it simply means is that they are assigning our tax revenues to investors. They are mortgaging our tax revenue to investors. This is what it simply means. Surprisingly, the status as communicated was full of contradictions simply because ESLA, as the name implies, is a tax revenue which comes into force by Act of Parliament. Assigning a parliamentary-backed levy in itself is a government guarantee and cannot be interpreted as unsecured. Number two, the ESLA is like any other government tax revenue, which is subject to successive government policy change. The 10-year bond is expected to run through about 3 different administrations and cannot be seen as having been ring-fenced to the extent that future government cannot review it. The third point is that the vehicle that has been used has no track record. It is unknown to the investing world, and it is not rated. Ladies and gentlemen, you agree with me that the IMF recently concluded their mission, and their findings are simple. Government of Ghana could have saved government money if they decided to go with Government of Ghana rating. Because at the end of the day, the value is the same. Government of Ghana could have decided to go to the market with a plain vanilla bond, but instead they decided to bring a structure that is so confusing, so complex, even the market cannot understand it. That is why we are where we are today. It is recalling that the leveraging of ESLA for the issuance of this bond vindicates the elsewhere President Mohammed's administration and proves the NPP, which opposed it, wrong. It is a matter of public records that the then opposition NPP and its leader, now the President of the Republic of Ghana, insisted that ESLA be scrapped and promised to do so when they are voted into office. And it's important that our brothers and sisters from the media have to take note of this matter. There is also lack of clarity in the status of the energy sector bond, which informs the enactment of the ESLA. In the first place, it is reasonable to believe that more debt would have been added at the end of 31st December 2016. Cutoff point for the purposes of issuing the bond is misleading. This lack of clarity has implications for the amortization of the debt. We therefore urge the government, as a matter of urgency, to conduct a comprehensive audit of the energy sector debt with a view of providing an update. And let me pause here to make one point. Another point the IMF raises is that it is meaningless for you to service a debt that you already owe, yet you are failing to stop what is accruing the debt. Let me also put on record that since the MPP administration took office in January 2017, unfortunately, they've added $500 million to the debt stock for the energy sector. And it's counting. Electricity company alone, every single day, every single month, they are adding $60 million monthly. VRA, NEDCO, and the rest, the amount is multiplying. So the debt is not ended, it's going to continue. It is equally important to stress the significant work that have been done under the NDC administration, which set up the ESLA to pay down the debt. By the time the NDC left office, about 2.2 billion of the debt owed the banks has been refinanced. Additionally, the remainder of the debt to the bank had been successfully negotiated to be settled within a very short time. Obviously, at the time we were leaving office, we had agreed with the banks to settle that within 3 to 5 years. So I don't know why this complex structure that nobody understands it. Now, let me take you to the last point as to why the market decided to stay away from this. One, there was no prior parliamentary approval. No prior parliamentary approval. Government went to the international financial market to raise an amount of 6 billion cedis with a possibility of an additional 4 billion cedis, making a total of 10 billion cedis with a vehicle called ESLA PLC. That is the Energy Sector Levies Act Public Limited Liability Company. How can you use a government tax revenue, use the name and form a company with it, and decide to stay away from Parliament? So you should respond to the issues that we have raised, and please, you should not attack the office. You remember that anytime minority raise issues that he has to deal with, as the chairman of the economic management team, he ran away from the fact and said that we don't read. The world #1 reader cannot even raise a bond. That anybody can do. It's interesting. Ghana's #1 reader cannot even raise a 6 billion bond. Yet he brought something that had put Ghana to shame. So Mr. Vice President, this one, we need you as the chairman of the economic management team to come and answer. That is led by our Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. I hope and pray that going forward, they will not commit these gargantuan mistakes that will not bring Ghana's image into disrepute. We've served the first notice. Let's wait and hear what happens. And at that point, we'll communicate to the public our next point of action. You agree with me that it is not true that the minister will come and refute it. The last time when we raised the issue of the bond, the 2.25 billion bond, he came to Parliament, and you agree with me that it was a big embarrassment. He came to embarrass himself. So I hope, and I can predict, that at that invitation, you'll see another embarrassment, this time gargantuan. Gargantuan. And then the next point, you talked about the fact that, City FM, you talked about the fact that 80% patronage, considering the rate, is not subscription same as patronage. It's considering the rate, it's not a failure. I beg to differ. I differ. One, the rate 19% for a 7-year bond is a bit too much. Considering the fact that this was heavily participated by foreigners, and you are going to obviously service the debt in cedis, but in the end, it's equivalent to servicing it in dollars. Because when the investors obviously receive their cedi, their head office is not in Ghana, so they will repatriate the currency, and government of Ghana will have to give them some guarantees in terms of the foreign currency so that they can repatriate that amount. So 19%, with that extensive roadshow that ended in London and Europe, shouldn't attract 19% for a 7-year and 19.5% for a 10-year bond. It's way too much. In fact, this is the first of its kind. The question from Star FM, this is the first of its kind. The first time that we have gone through a roadshow, international roadshow, and gets a subscription of 80%. I think it's appalling. I think it is unprecedented. And I mean, his own words, 80%. I'm granted that your words is 80%. Though which we disagree with you is 80%. We think that this is the first of its kind. That's never happened in our history, and it should never be repeated. Ghana has now become a subject of financial market gossip. Gossip. They are gossiping about us. They think that this is a failure. And in fact, the financial market is the new name for Ghana is energy bomb. They mentioned the vice president's name. So we can
let me add to what the ranking that Ghana has packaged a product to issue a bond, and the subscription rate is below 100%. And for instance, if you take 100 tomatoes to market to sell, and you're able to sell only 80, what happened to the remaining 20 tomatoes? To get rotten. Is it a failure? I think that by their standard, the standard of MPP, if 20 tomatoes get rotten, it's not a failure. That is MPP standard. But the people of Ghana knows that there's a failure, that all the bonds that we want to raise, the amount that we want to raise, we couldn't raise it, so it's a failure. So this is the first time that they've gone to the market. Ghana as a country went to the market to issue a bond and the investors lost confidence in the economy of Ghana, and for that matter, they did not come out to buy the bond. So it's a failure. In the past, anytime we go to the market, the investors were willing to give us more than what we're asking for. Now the investors are not willing to give you even what you yourself you want. So it's a failure, complete failure.
You get 21%. Is that not the case? They got 702. You get 21%. You ask for a rematch, and still you come home beating. So the rematch, I did better. I almost scored a goal. I mean, what logic is this? This is Bawo logic. You see, you went to raise an amount of money. You told the investors when you wanted to raise the money. On that day, they said they won't give you the money. You then extend by another week, go to their offices, and now you are begging them to save you from disgrace. For one whole week, you are begging them. That was what was happening. It's not as if people were just calling. They were now moving from houses and offices and begging investors. They will call you and say, oh, this is your good friend, you know, and even still, you ended up the way we did. When did you see a rematch in bond matches in Ghana? When was the first time you saw a bond rematch? For the first time. You see, you people have to tell Dr. Bawumia one thing. He learned economics at O level. Is that not it? Economics at A level. First degree, master's, PhD. Came and worked at the Bank of Ghana as a central banker. He still doesn't understand the economy. And he talks about GPS and insults our former president, who himself is the man who is credited for the transformation in the telecom and ICT center as a minister of communications. So today we are dealing with an economy managed by an overhyped economic team. The main striker, Dr. Bawumia, can't even score half a goal. And when you talk, they give you CVs. They'll tell you that on the flanks there's a Harvard-trained midfielder. And then there's a Yale-trained finance. He is playing at the right back. And then they will tell you that Osia Adeyo or Safomafo is in holding midfield. Then we'll tell you what is your ball possession after first half, 21%. How many goals did you score? You scored 0. That is the reality. Please. You see, we want the people of Ghana to understand the economic management team we have. The days when you can go to Malata market and buy onions and tomatoes and calculate inflation is gone. And everybody who has learned economy knows that there's nothing like Malata inflation. But Bawumia calculated Malata inflation after his wife asked him to buy onions and tomatoes. And you journalists praised him for embarrassing Ghana. The academia kept quiet when he was polluting our students. Today, you see where he has sent us. We are now a laughing stock. I just came from Tanzania, and you'll be surprised that a very key senior figure was telling us that Bawumia came to Mauritius and was bragging. That's what your colleagues see you in the eyes of your colleagues. Please, we are doing serious business. They rode on the back of the confidence of the economy that the NDC left to raise a bond of $2.25 billion in 4 hours. In April, when you're not here, they did it in 4 hours. What has now happened that in 1 month, they still cannot raise it? You see, they are destroying the fundamentals that we developed for them. When they were having honeymoon, January, February, March, they came here and they were taking credit. We told them they should wait. Their time will come. The time has come. We have been embarrassed. They are using a special purpose vehicle that is riskier than any other instrument. Look, go and look at the balance sheet of ESLA PLC after raising the bond. It is negative 3.6 billion. That is the balance sheet. Is that not it? Do they have any asset on that balance sheet? Tell me which investor will put his money in a company that starts with a negative 3.6 billion. It is only under the best economists that the world has ever produced. Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. And I'm sure tomorrow he will grant another interview that is reminiscent of when he was a running mate. But now as a vice president, walk the talk. My big brother mentioned the point that he couldn't understand very basic mathematics. He has never understood the economy of Ghana. He has always lied about the economy of Ghana. You recall he said that our debt was about 36 billion and will end at $40 billion. When he came here with his budget, they said it was around 26 billion. How did His Excellency John Dramani Mahama miraculously find $14 billion to pay down the debt in 3 months before we left office? And you never asked him. He took you for a ride. He took the people of Ghana for a ride. But the reality is that he knows nothing, but he's so confident and eloquent, he can confuse all of you. But the reality is he's not managing the economy. So we'll walk the talk and see where we are. But this bond, I doubt if the 4 billion, they will attempt it again, because they won't get a third rematch. Investors are already away from it. Thank you.
And after an international road show, so it means that the whole world has been invited to show their confidence in our economy, and throughout the period of the NDC, over the last in the 8 years that we were in power, there was not one international roadshow done that we did not have an oversubscription. So that clearly must be a significant first in our history, to have gone all the way out there and still not being able to get the necessary patronage. And of course, for me, that's quite revealing, because we are dealing also with a finance minister who obviously has boasted again and again about having, having the necessary experience, being what you call a globally accomplished investment banker, and therefore he had the necessary network out there. And if in spite of all that, they still cannot raise the money that they actually believe they could raise, that clearly tells us that there is a lot that is not going on well. So it's important for you in the media to let the country know that in spite of all the beautiful, nice words that are being used, the center is not holding. And that is being shown in the fact that the world out there is not being deceived at all. And I'm sure if you are watching development, you would know, for example, that this is a country that is struggling with revenue. Okay, even basic revenue is a struggle. And why will it not be a struggle? It's a struggle because you basically hang your own selves in opposition, pretending that somehow when you come to office, you don't need to raise taxes. You actually had magical capacity to be able to unleash the economy of Ghana. If you remove so and so taxation, you can induce such growth in the economy. And then you come and realize that every single thing that you were talking about in opposition is not the reality. You've removed taxes and you realize the economy is not getting the spark that you need. Growth is absolutely not happening. The only growth we are seeing today is the growth on the back of what the NDC has done, especially as far as oil and crude oil exploration was concerned. So that tells you that the talk is going on well, but the reality is dawning more and more. And it's important for our friends in power now to start eating the humble pie and to realize that talk is easy, but the reality is a different ball game. As for Bawumia, I think the least said about him, the better. For me, an individual who can swear on the Holy Quran and lie in front of the world, that individual has absolutely no credibility to even dare accuse anybody of being a liar. Because if there is one super liar in this country, that will be him. Anyone who can swear on the Holy Quran and lie to the world, who can swear on the Constitution and at the Supreme Court lie to the world, that individual has absolutely zero credibility. And so for him, when I hear him talking about propaganda, I'm like, propaganda? You are the embodiment of propaganda. Anyone who can swear on the Quran and lie is absolutely a congenital and pathological liar, and that's the reality.
NDC had a superior economic management team as against the MPP. And it is evident. Look, names don't win matches. Names, CVs do not win competitive matches. It has nothing to do with names. What matters is ability to sit down and work. I would have wished to guide this administration if I am asked to do so, in the interest of Ghana, to make Ghana a better place for all of us. But obviously, we have an administration that believes in what they do. They think they are the best. The vice president always insults us, minority. Yet, nobody has said that he's attacking us. And that is what I find it unfortunate from you, the media, and the civil society of this republic, that in one breath you have a vice president who is insulting us, nobody talks about it, yet Ghanaians expect us to give them advice. I would wish to give that advice to the government and to guide them, to shepherd them into the rightful road, for free of charge. Because after all, I'm a member of parliament. So we would wish to do that. Our economic management team, we are ready to help them, but they won't consult you. The next point you raised relates to the fact that parliamentary approval. Yes, we've said that the government has breached the constitution, obviously, for not seeking prior parliamentary approval to go to the bond market for the purposes of using our tax revenue as collateral. One, establishing an ESLA PLC, which is a state company, without parliamentary approval, and many more, using the taxpayers' money to borrow 10 billion Ghana cedis, and you fail to let Parliament be aware. I think in itself, that is why we are inviting the minister to give us, if there's any reason why they did that. We will wait until he comes to Parliament and answer that question, and we can now let Ghanaians be aware our next move to deal with the situation. And finally, somebody asked as to whether Dumso is going to come back. Let me put on record that since this administration took office, they have never added 1 megawatt of power. 1 megawatt of power. Whatever we are seeing today is inheritance from President John Dramani Mahama. And it's unfortunate that His Excellency, the President of the Republic now, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, once said that he never inherited anything good. He inherited a stable power. He inherited an economy that he's building on today to ride at the back of it. Unfortunately, he's eroding the economic fundamentals that we gave to him.